I'd like to welcome you as well as the legislators to this session. I might do a couple of housekeeping chores. First of all, this is being taped. You can see it again in a couple places if you want to. One is you'll be able to go to the Evansville Library's website, cruise around in there, and it'll be posted on that website. It's also going to be shown on WNIN on Cable 12 on February the 12th at 8 p.m., and on February 13th at 2 p.m., and also on February the 14th at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And that's on Cable 9.2. So if you want to watch this again, you are able to do that. And actually, the library is putting more. They've got some of the back events on this particular thing too. So you'll be able to see some past Meet Your Legislator session if you so desire. If you'd like to be notified by email, we have a listserv set up. And all you have to do is type in your name and email address in the very back, and you'll be included in the listing to get notices of this. There's going to be one more event in the 2010 session, and that's going to be March the 6th. So that's going to be the next event, and it's also the last event of the season. But once we have you on that list, you don't have to sign up for it again. But once we have that, we'll just keep giving you notices, and that's the only thing we're going to use it for, to notify you for this particular event. The format is that each speaker is going to get 2 minutes. When they get into about a minute and a half, I'm going to put this thing up. And when they use that last 30 seconds, I'm going to cut them off, which is a little bit different that we've done in the past. I'm going to figure out when the end of the sentence is that they're in the middle of, and that's going to be it. And if they use too many prepositions, they won't get it quite to finish the sentence. But at any rate, we're going to be pretty tight with that. Legislators, we're asking them to be careful too, because what we're going to do with legislators is they'll get a couple minutes before we start, or as we start, to kind of say what's going on up in Annapolis. And they'll have a couple minutes to do that. And then once we do that, we'll do the speakers. Then each legislator will get a couple minutes to respond. We're going to stop the concept of being able to yield time to somebody else. Each speaker, no matter which side you're on, you get 2 minutes. And there's not going to be a multiplier for that. So at any rate, that's the idea. The last session of this, we only got 6 different speakers in, and historically we've been getting closer to 15. Our goal here is for you to bring your point up, make your question, make your point. You should be able to do that in 2 minutes, and then get a response for it. I mean, this is a town hall kind of a Q&A thing. So that's kind of how we want to deal with this and try to get as many different issues as possible. That said, we are going to go from side to side as we get started. But anyway, I do want to mention that during the session, everything is moved from the first house to the second. If you want to contact your legislators, there's a couple ways to do that. If you want to call the Senate, it's 1-800-382-9467. That's 1-800-382-9467. If you want to call the House, that's 1-800-382-9841. So you can wind up making those phone calls and just ask for the person you want to speak to, and you'll be connected through. You can also email folks, and to do that, you can put either an H for House or S for Senate in the address box, and then their district number. And to find out district numbers, we have their maps up on the wall, so you can find out who they are. And you put that district number in, and then the @ symbol, and then in.gov. And that will take you to their own email. You can also contact and find out about the Indiana General Assembly by going to the Indiana General Assembly's website. Just go to that. You can track bills, and you can do all kinds of stuff. Find out actual language of bills. Okay, those housekeeping chores being done, we'll move right into the report from Indianapolis, and I think this time we will start on the House side with Representative Crouch.
All right, thank you. Thank you. You started with me last time, but
I did. Well, we can start on the Senate if you'd like.
That's quite all right. Good morning. Thank you all for coming out on this cold, kind of blustery morning. And up in Indianapolis, there's been a lot of activity. And as I had stated at the last meeting, there is almost a love fest going on up there because we have no money and there's nothing to fight over. But having said that, it has been very busy and very productive. In this past week, I ended up getting out of the House a bill that deals with long-term care options for seniors. And this will give them more opportunities and more options to stay in their homes as opposed to going to nursing homes. 89% of seniors that have been polled have indicated that that is important to them. And Indiana ranks 45th in the nation in terms of the amount of Medicaid dollars we spend to keep people in their homes. So I believe this is a good first step. Senator Becker is the sponsor in the Senate, and I know that she will bring it through and get the job done. And in the wisdom of the Senate, I'm sure will improve the bill. Thank you all for being here, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Next is Representative Van Haften.
Good morning. As Suzanne said, we have finished up the first half of the session. There were 105 bills passed out of the Indiana House of Representatives in the first half of the session. I'm not certain how many bills the Senate passed out, but we anxiously await those pieces of proposed legislation. A couple of interesting highlights of the past week, at least. Tuesday, the House passed House Bill 1367 on pretty much, I believe, a party line vote, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of trying to help out with our education system here, especially the K through 12 education system, with the cuts being made by the governor due to the shortness of revenues. Schools across this state are suffering, and what we try to do is create a little bit of flexibility for school districts in terms of the use of their funding to make sure that we are providing a quality above average education to our students. Personally, I had House Bill 1241 that passed out. I think I discussed that last time in terms of trying to help out the Evansville Airport. We have an inconsistent tax structure in Indiana as it compares with the state of Kentucky. So there are a number of aircraft that are parked in Kentucky, being fueled, paying taxes there, as opposed to being parked here in Indiana and paying fuel taxes in Indiana. That passed out 98-0. I hope that makes it to the end so that we can bring in a little additional revenue to the state as opposed to giving it to the state of Kentucky. Out of Public Policy Committee that I chair, we did pass out a texting while driving bill, which would essentially disallow using a electronic device, your phone or other things, to send text messages while you are driving. This is one topic that has gotten attention over the past couple of years, not only in Indiana but other states. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Next is Representative Rican.
Thank you and good morning. And first I'd like to congratulate the representative here. He didn't announce that he has gotten a promotion in the House. And what is that called? This is my learning experience. What are you now?
Deputy Speaker Pro Tem.
Deputy Speaker Pro Tem. He did a great job up at the podium. He's very fair and listens to everyone. We were very, very proud. Congratulations. Just to start off with, the bill that I had worked on regarding abandoned housing did pass out of the House. I was real excited about that. This is a bill that will help push some of the houses that have been abandoned through the system a little faster. We keep chipping away at these issues. Last year we worked on trying to keep people in their homes. This takes the issue of once a house has gone into foreclosure, trying to make sure that it's maintained and trying to make sure that whoever is the foreclosure document holder actually gets that to a sheriff's sale so we can get a new owner that cares for that home and fixes it up. So that went through, and I'm looking forward to the success in the Senate. The other consolidation bill which I had, which was to not require a fiscal impact study with the consolidation as we're going through, but to encourage it. We'll get its hearing in the Senate on Wednesday, and Senator Cruz is spearheading that with Senator Dyke, and I think it's going to be very successful and a benefit for all of us. We all want to know how the changes are going to be paid for, and this should help. The other bill, House Bill 1003, hit a firestorm Tuesday night, and if anybody wants the details on that, you can go to my Facebook, and I have written a letter with the details. But basically, the House Republicans put up a block for any future discussion. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Representative Avery.
Thank you, Jim. This last week was very busy. We've been in session now for several weeks, and every bill that I authored this year came down for a vote Wednesday. So I authored 4 bills this year, and all 4 of them were voted on Wednesday. So I had a very busy day, and that rarely happens. I don't want to see it to happen again either. But one of the bills that I've talked about before, and in fact I authored last year but died when the Senate decided last year to amend it full of things that I didn't want. But they created a Christmas tree that was a bill that dealt with heavy-duty vehicles. In the state of Indiana, we have a weight requirement for our semi-trucks, but I increased the weight by 400 pounds. I'm not into making big trucks, but in this case, it was designed to, if they would install an auxiliary power unit, you often see these semi-trucks sitting in truck stops or beside the road with the engines running, burning diesel fuel, creating pollution and making noise and also burning diesel fuel. And this bill says if you install an auxiliary power unit, which is a small engine that will run instead of the diesel engine, it'll save gas and our diesel, and it'll also reduce pollution. And this was suggested by Donna Bergman with the Environmental Protection Agency. Another bill that I dealt with, deals with the issue of children. I introduced 2 bills dealing with the issue of children in need of services this year. One creates a DCS Oversight Commission. As you know, we spent millions and millions of additional dollars trying to protect children, but it doesn't seem to be working very well. And this will require the state to provide some oversight to see if the money is wisely spent. The other came from local Judge Niemeyer, and it deals with allowing the court to terminate parental rights after the second disposition of a child being abused or neglected. And then I have another one, but I won't talk about that right now.
Correct. We were doing pretty good until we got to you. Next, Senator Becker.
Good morning. It's great to be with you and appreciate all of you who've come out this morning to wade through the little bit of snow we got. Wasn't too difficult to do. I want to let you know that I do have handouts at the back of the room that gives you kind of a halftime report since we don't have a whole lot of time to discuss it. And there's also, though, what I call cutting the red tape cards back there that have easy access to state government, various toll-free numbers if you're having problems with the Department of Revenue or whoever it might be. So feel free to help yourselves. It is halftime, and the Senate heard 161 bills, and we actually passed 135, which is kind of amazing to me since the House usually passes a whole lot more than the Senate does. But I think really part of the difference and I think in the whole atmosphere is when there's no money, there's fewer bills that are going to be heard, all in all. So in the Senate, we've passed ethics reform, and I might want to say it's not because of any kind of incident or anybody's gotten in trouble in Indiana. There's no scandals or anything like that. But what we wanted to do is to provide more transparency between lobbyists and legislators. And Senate Bill 114 does that. And it's actually, the House has also passed an ethics reform bill. And there are some differences, but they've actually already been working together on those bills so that they can reconcile them so that we will get an ethics reform bill this session. And I think the 2 primary issues, one of them is that lawmakers, before they go to lobby, they must sit out of the legislature for at least 1 year. So, and we've also passed an agricultural bill for farmers, Senate Bill 396, which will help farm property in reassessments because farm property is reassessed differently than homeowners. And the Farm Bureau is supporting this bill, and it will provide some more stabilization on farm property. And since Jim's already given me the 30-second, I'll pause and be happy to talk with you later.
Thank you. Senator Dyke.
Last but not least, thank you. Thanks for coming here today. I appreciate it. And very quickly, I won't talk about the legislature because they already hit all the bills. I want to talk really briefly about a local not-for-profit that I got the pleasure of touring yesterday, the Evansville Association of the Blind. Now, if no one really knows about it, which I really didn't, it's the first time I ever toured it, knew some employees there, but that's about it. What they do is take people that are blind or are vision impaired and also other disabilities and let them go to work. And they work for other businesses around, Whirlpool being the biggest business they do work for. They contract work out for Whirlpool, such as putting shelves together, putting plastic on glass shelves, things like that. They also work for a number of other companies. Another big one is Berry Plastics. When Whirlpool closes in just a few months, it's going to be detrimental to this association. Now, as I told you, these people are all disabled people, but they chose to go out and earn a living instead of taking money from taxpayers. So it's a very, very good organization. This will be detrimental to them because it will affect about 30 to 50 of their jobs. I think there's about 90 people there working right now. So it's going to be detrimental and hurts them very badly. So if anyone out there knows of any business, they could actually do work for our contract out. It will help a lot of these disadvantaged individuals to help themselves and help the community. So thank you very much.
You're in good shape. Thank you. Now it's your turn. We're going to start from side to side. You'll have a couple minutes to come to the microphone, and then we'll ask if there's anybody else. We'll take a couple other speakers with a different take on the same topic, and then we'll have responses from legislators. So this time, we're going to start on this side of the room. We'll start in the very back this time. Way in the back. Please step up to the microphone. And while she's doing that, I'll take another little housekeeping thing. You may or may not have noticed that there's some pastries over to my left and to your right. There's also some coffee. Help yourself to those. Just when you're done, make sure that you police your area. Take your cups back, and we also have a couple of donation jars to help cover the cost of that. So we appreciate your participating in those. And with that, please state your name, and you've got a couple minutes.
Kathy Edgerton. My issue is TIF funding and how we can help use that at this point in time. We're told all the time we're broke, from the state level, from the county level, et cetera. But yet we have TIF funds that are growing at 25% a year. In particular, Burkhart Road TIF grew from $10 million to $13 million last year, during the recession. And it just seems like we need to find ways to make that more flexible. That money's right now dedicated to road projects on the east side. But, how many projects can we do? Where's the future allocations for that money? And at this point in time, could that not somehow, some of that be used more for local government finances? I guess that's my question. It seems to me we've put things in, we've taken our funds and put them in different pots, and then we don't have them for employee benefits, for general fund purposes, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Point is, if I can summarize that, is like you're concerned about there being too much TIP funding going on. Yes. Okay. Is there any other a different take on the same subject? Seeing none, responses from the legislators. I see Representative Van Haften first, then Representative Rican.
Kathy, I think you bring up an interesting point because it's very similar to what we've looked at over the past few years in terms of school funding. We've talked about we have a pot here for capital projects. We have a pot here for operational projects. You can't use capital for operations. So, if a school district doesn't build something, that capital fund or silo builds up in amounts, but operations go down. So you're looking at a pot of money versus not being able to get access to it. And it's the same principle, because I think what we do when we look at creating these means of funding on almost anything is, for example, a TIF district. If I live on the west side of Evansville, do I want to be paying a tax that basically benefits Burkhart Road? No, not particularly. So that's why we create the TIF districts. in saying that all that money that is created there is going to stay there. So what you end up with is, when you have a successful tax district, as I think, because of the development on Burkhart Road, you have a good revenue source. There are some TIF districts that have not been successful, so they don't generate that type of revenue, so you're not able to reinvest in that infrastructure. I think we would have to look at changing the principle of what we create these funds for, and be very careful in terms of when you can tap into them. Going back to the school situation, yes, you'd like to be able to tap into capital funds in order to help operations, but do you deplete the capital fund such that when you have to do a capital project for the schools, you don't have the money there because you spent it on operations? Very interesting question. It's just a matter of us looking at basically the principles and why we have created these different funds. But if you've built as many roads as you can and you still have a lot of money in there, is there a better source for that money? So I think that's a very good question, Kathy, something for us to look into.
Thank you. Next was Representative Rican.
I hope this is on. Thank you. I'm also reminded, in addition to what Representative Van Heften is saying, that we've also looked at breaking down those so-called silos you hear, where money is departmentalized, and it may very well be that through legislation, one TIF can benefit another one, and that may be something to look at. But that's an excellent point to bring up, and certainly we need to figure out what are the needs in that area in the future, and maybe looking at some legislation that could break down some of those silos. We know that downtown there is a huge TIF that is going to be used for the arena, so who knows? That's a good idea. While I have a minute, let me also mention that I brought some information on I-69. We had the benefit of talking with the folks from NDOT and at the very end of the session, and there was a question, and folks were asking that, raising their hand, and it's always very frustrating when I know you can't get those answers. So we do have the map, the poster back there, and a few extra handouts if anybody wants them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Senator Dyke, then Representative Crouch.
Yes, Kathy, thanks for the question. It is a good question, and as Representative Van Happen said, we need to find creative ways of using different pots of money. But unfortunately, right now on TIFs, it is locked into more or less infrastructure, roads, sewers, water, things like that. I did have a piece of legislation this year that would allow local entities, governing bodies, to negotiate with companies before they build or expand, to have a resolution ahead of time and to kind of define the playing field so they knew what was going on and where this money was going to go. So unfortunately, that bill died. I had an amendment on another bill, and that died also, but that would allow more flexibility with local control involved.
Thank you. Representative Crouch was next, then Representative Avery.
Thank you. I'm kind of drawing from my memory from when I was county auditor, so I will be happy to stand corrected. But at the time, if my memory serves me correctly, the controller and the auditor determined how much money was to be taken from the TIF every year. Therefore, if all the money wasn't needed to pay for projects, they could decrease the amount that would come out of that TIF. Now, the reason that's important is what TIF does is by keeping the tax money in a certain area, it drives up the rates in the other areas. So it is important to know that that is in place, and that if money is not taken, if money is not needed, money should not be determined to be taken to build up a savings account for the TIF area. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Representative Avery, then Senator Becker.
Thank you, Jim. A TIF district is a tax increment financing, and in a district, it's a local option. It's really not one that we don't create the districts in Evansville or any other city. The local units of government do, and they use the growth in this case property taxes in that district because of the industry locating there and paying more property taxes. They use that growth beyond what were previously paid in that district to fund capital projects such as road improvement, sewers, and things like that. And on the surface of it, it sounds like a good idea, and it does help with economic development. But quite too often, I think they create these districts in areas that are growing anyhow, and that growth would have gone into the base to provide services. But so I'm not sure as to whether it's has tremendous degree of merit. I think though that in some areas where you have to encourage growth, it's really a good idea, such as distressed areas. But we're doing a STIF district in Warwick County is one of the bills that passed the House. That's sales tax increment financing, by creating a district to develop the infrastructure to provide for some development in northwestern Warwick County. But anyhow, I'm not sure I agree with all the people that just spoke. I'm not sure that TIF money should be used for anything more than capital improvements. I'm not sure it's something that should be used in the general fund, but because if you want the growth, the development, improvement, the infrastructure, it needs to go for improvement in the infrastructure. But anyhow, I'll shut up now.
Thank you. Senator Becker.
I just say briefly that I would encourage you, Kathy, to talk to local officials, because this is something that is determined at the local area, and I've not heard from any locally elected officials that they have too much money for roads or sewers or infrastructure. In fact, they're usually crying that they don't have enough. So without knowing a lot more about it, I would be very hesitant to change it to allow it to go for other things, because it is designed to help improve a growing area or an area that needs special assistance otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Everybody was really good that time. We'll see how that moves.
Let's quit that.
We'll now move to this side. I see right here in the middle the lady with the white hair. Yes.
Come on, Jim.
What the heck? Well, already blonde. Okay, blonde hair.
My name is Gloria Spear, and I'm speaking as an individual, but I am a CASA volunteer, and I do have a question for Dennis, who's... Yesterday on your email report, I read about House Bill 1085. Do I understand that did pass out of the House? The one on the Judge Niemeyer...
Right. It passed by a vote of 94-2 on Wednesday.
Okay.
But the issue, though.
All right. The issue is on. Well, let me read what it says here.
It's obviously accurate if I said it right.
This would allow the court to terminate parental rights after efforts to reunify the family and after two separate rulings that a child is a child in need of services. What this means is to cut down the amount of time a child is in foster care. We already have legislation that's supposed to limit that, but with all the appeals and delays, the little boy that I have was a baby when I got him, and now he's a little boy who brings me books to read. And, we'd like to cut that down. I'm assuming that that's the reason that the judge has proposed this legislation. So I'd like to know if Dennis wants to tell me a little more about it, and I'd also like to know about the prospects in the Senate.
Thank you. I guess we'll start with Representative Avery first then.
First of all, the prospects in the Senate, it's being authored by our Senator Holdman and Senator Broden and Simpson, and Senator Holdman has an interest in children's issues, having worked on it prior to his coming to the Senate. He's a freshman, I believe. He's one of the babies in the Senate. But the bill, is quite correctly says, it provides that a court may terminate parental rights after efforts to reunify the family, because that's a federal requirement. We must make efforts to reunify the family in order to receive Title IV-E money or CAPTA funding, which is Child Abuse and Prevention and Treatment Act of 1975, I believe. But after we make those efforts, and if there are a number of other options. If the crime is really severe, they don't really have to make those efforts. But their federal law requires that. But after that happens, it could be minimal, obviously. But and after the second, you don't say conviction, you say adjudication in juvenile court of a child in need of services or abused or neglected child, the court may terminate parental rights. There are another, if you quite correctly said, there are a number of other options. For example, if the child's been out of the home 15 of the last 22 months, they may move to terminate parental rights. As I said, if the crime is of a very severe nature, and we have a shopping list of crimes that were committed against the crime, they may move to terminate also. But there are a number of other options too. But Judge Niemeyer felt that this was an additional tool he needed in order to better protect children. And we had a hearing. Initially, the DCS opposed it because they said it would have violated the federal law, in that it would have said I would have basically not required them to make efforts to reunify the family, and they told me I couldn't do that. And after reading the law, they were probably correct. So I made that modification, and it came out of committee unanimously, and it passed almost unanimously. There were two people obviously woke up on the wrong side of the bed and voted no, but I'm very optimistic about its chances in the Senate. And then now DCS is supportive of the bill too.
Okay, thank you. I did forget to mention that is there anybody that has a different take on the same subject? Different take on the same subject? Yeah. Please state that. Yes. You want me over here? Sure. Okay.
Good morning.
My name is Pete Rembert, and I am adoptive and foster parent of years. When we got one of our children, she was at an early age, and turns out we just got the adoption completed, and she's now 4 years old. And the issues that came up with prolonging her adoption, the main issue was father was incarcerated in one of the penitentiaries and repeatedly times brought to court and never had the DNA/parental test done for some reason. Now, I can't understand why somebody who's incarcerated cannot have a test done, if you follow me on that. But I don't know who the blame lies on. There were people passing blame back and forth, but it seems to me that that could be corrected pretty simple and move the adoption process on faster.
Okay, thank you. Other responses from legislators? I think next was Representative Rican.
Thank you. And one of my concerns was that Pete actually came this morning. I would like for him to meet and talk with Representative Avery. And again, congratulations. That's a great job getting that oversight committee through the House. But the other issue, in addition to that, are the decreases in support for foster and adoptive parents, and it's already affecting, as I have had reports, folks who are going to be able to continue to support the foster or adoptive children. So there's a lot of very serious issues that are out there.
Okay, thank you. Other legislative responses? Senator Becker.
I'll just say briefly that Senator Lawson has a similar bill in the Senate as well that has passed, and so I'm sure that, and Representative Avery may be carrying it. It deals with DCS, and Travis Holdman is a good person to be carrying the bill that Dennis is talking about, 1085, because he does have a background. He actually used to work for Family and Social Services, so he does have a background in this area, so he'll be very, very good at that.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other responses, thank you. We will move on to the next. You want another shot at it?
No. Something Representative Rica mentioned, there was a 10% cut in aid to foster care and also the adoption subsidy program, but there was a lawsuit filed by an organization, I can't think of it right now, but a wonderful organization to challenging those cuts that the governor made. And they've already ruled in the favor. They've put a halt on those cuts, and so those cuts are not going to proceed. And I thought that was very good news. And what you were saying, I think, is very consistent with what we're trying to do. And I think this will help what you were talking about. And I am carrying Senate Bill 149, which is the bill that Senator Becker talked about. I'm the House sponsor of that bill, and it has not been assigned to committee yet. But it doesn't do anything that I've done in these other two bills, but it does some other things that are very important as far as updating the DCS laws.
Okay, thank you. We're back to this side of the room again. See the lady right here in the front. Please step up to the microphone.
My name's Ann Shank, and I'm going to read from my paper, if you don't mind. I'm a teacher with the Mount Vernon School District, and as you know, we're facing a major financial crisis. This past week, the House voted on the emergency spending bill to assist schools who are being hit hard by the state cuts in funding. I'd like to personally thank Representatives Van Haften, Rican, and Avery for voting in support of our schools. I would also like to say to Representative Crouch that I'm very disappointed that you did not vote in support of public education emergency funding. The Senate also will be voting on emergency school funding. And my question is first for Senator Dyke and then for Senator Becker. Will you vote yes for emergency funding of public education as passed with House Bill 1367?
Okay, thank you. 1367. Is there any other different take on the same subject? Seeing none, she pretty much touched base for everybody. So, first responders. Senator Dyke.
I think she asked me first, Jim. Did you hear that? Yes, and I will vote in favor of that. Now, what I see happening is we had a Senate bill very similar to that. And do you remember what number it was?
309.
It was Senate Bill 309. I voted against 309 because it actually froze wages of teachers. It more or less told local school districts they had to open up the books on the contract and say, okay, we're going to freeze the wages. So I was against that. But I will support this. It's unfortunate we have to use money from the other funds to help out with the general fund money, but I will be in favor of that.
Thank you. Senator Becker.
I haven't seen the bill from the House yet, but I would tend to be supportive of that. But let me also explain that Senate Bill 309 also provided transfers from the Capital Improvement Fund. This was a bill offered by Senator Alting, Ron Alting of Lafayette. And what Senator Dyke, and I did support it because I felt like it was a good mechanism to get the process started to allow transfers from the Capital Improvement Fund. One of the, I guess in the Senate Finance Committee, they did put language in there saying that teachers had to agree not to raise wages in order for this to occur. And their thinking behind it is that right now all state employees, our wages are frozen. And they're not getting any pay increases, and so they felt like if you're being supported by government funding, that would be a good parameter to put on it, because then more money could go for actual for kids. That was the argument. I don't know. I also felt like it was put in there because we know that there will be negotiations between both the House and the Senate, and so I think both of those bills, hopefully I'll have an opportunity to vote for it, and if it comes to the floor, I will certainly support it.
Thank you. Next is Representative Crouch.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing up 1367 and giving me the opportunity to explain my vote. What we voted for, Republicans, was a minority report. And that minority report actually allowed for greater flexibility for school corporations, and it actually allowed more monies to be transferred and used for local school corporations. The one caveat that was in the minority report that wasn't in the majority report was that none of the monies that were transferred could be raised for salary increases at the expense of laying off teachers. And I think that's important. As Senator Becker mentioned, state employees have not received pay increases for 2 years, probably won't receive pay increases for the next 2 years. Our working families are struggling. Many of them have lost their jobs and have seen pay cuts. They've seen rising insurance costs. So to me, we shouldn't single out a group of people. And while, education is supportive, and I thank you and everyone for being an educator, because it's a very difficult job. I think we all need to tighten our belts in these tough economic times. And so for that reason, I voted for the minority report and did not vote for 1367. And thank you for allowing me to explain my vote.
Thank you. Next is Representative Rican, then Representative Van Haften.
Just a point of clarification, in the 1367, there's also the 5%, the opportunity to take from the capital improvement or the capital fund up to 5% of the balance, which I think, again, increases that flexibility. So that one at least should go through.
Thank you. Representative Van Haften.
The question of public education is something that I think all of us, no matter which side you fall down on, have to continue to take a look at and think about. And the worst part of it is the way it gets politicized. I've sat back and I've listened to some folks talk about we have to freeze the salaries of teachers. We can't increase their salaries. They have to go along with this also. I can't speak for the Warwick County system. I can't speak even for the EVSC. I'm not sure what they've done teacher-wise. But I know for the past 2 years, there's not been one Mount Vernon teacher that has gotten an increase in their salary because the 2-year agreement they entered into froze their salaries. I also know I don't think it's necessarily public because the school board still has to look at it. They're not going to see an increase over the next 2 years either. So we spend so much time on the politics of public education, trying to demonize each side, and especially demonizing teachers. We don't spend enough time looking at what we want in public education. With the policies that have occurred over the past few years by the current administration and the people that support those policies, we are driving every school district in this state to being average. We are not giving any school district, any community, the opportunity to say if they want their school district to be above average, to let them do that. The legislature, the governor, made a huge mistake when they moved the funding of school operations to sales tax as opposed to local property taxes. I can't remember how everyone else voted up here, but I know I voted against that, and I've talked about this ever since. It's not your local school board that's going to decide what type of program you want, whether you think it's important that you have advanced calculus or a physics class so that you can move your kids into becoming the engineers and the mathematicians we all need in the future. It's going to be someone in Indianapolis that says, here, you get the same amount of money that every other school district gets. And you know what's going to happen is the localities that have the higher incomes that can pay an increase in property taxes are going to be the ones that have a curriculum that we all wish we had. The rest of us are going to have basic curriculums, and you're going to see people moving out, as we've seen, moving out of Posey County. You're going to see people moving away from the smaller school districts because they want to go to the bigger school districts that have the broader curriculum. That's my view on it. I wish we could get away from the politicization of public education because I have friends in public ed. I know I have Democrat friends, I have Republican friends, I have Libertarian friends, I have independent friends. But they're all there because they want to make public education better for the kids of today so that our tomorrow is better. Let me step off the soapbox.
Okay. What about Druid friends? Those two? Okay. Druids. Yeah. Next, Representative Avery.
Thank you. I like Trent, voted against the state takeover of education. When I was first elected to the legislature, I think the state paid less than 50% of the cost of the operating budget. Now it's 100% of the operating budget is paid for by the state of Indiana. And that was, there is something you give up when the state takes everything over. And I think that's control. We're losing control of education at the local level, and I think that's unfortunate. And 1367 is a bill that provided more local options. The state legislature, we sit up there and we act like a big city council, and we act like a big county council, and we act like a big school board. We make all the decisions for local government and tell you how much money you can raise, how much money you can spend, how do you spend it, and I think we're going to have to trust local government a bit more, and because I personally think government functions best where it's most local, and we're destroying that in Indianapolis, and we're always hearing about the federal government taking over control, but you should watch what we're doing in Indianapolis, and so anyhow, I did support 1367. I think it's a good idea to provide more local options, and the bill that Representative Kraut said she didn't vote against House Bill 1367. She did vote against it. She did vote for the minority report, which was not adopted, and then she voted against the bill. So I wanted to clarify that too. But anyhow, thank you.
Thank you. Next issue, move on this side. I see a hand up back in the back, red hat. Please step up to the microphone.
Yes, good morning. My name's Fred Cook, and I'm the chairman of the Coalition of Inner City Neighborhoods. And last month, there was a letter sent out stating that Indiana would no longer pay Medicare premiums or enrollment fees, and they took this out of several people's checks that I know personally, which caused hardship for them. And I just want to thank Senator Bob Dyke and Gail Reekin, because when I called them, the system speeded this process up, and those funds were returned to those people's bank accounts. And I just want to thank both of you for helping out in that situation.
Thank you. Is there anyone who has a different take on the same subject? Seeing none, responses from legislators. Senator Dyke.
Thank you, Fred. I appreciate it. But what we've found out, and I'm sure all of us up here have dealt with it, that the state and Medicaid that get money to people who really need it, especially nursing homes and disabled and elderly, is a slower process all the time. And I think all of our legislative assistants have become caseworkers in trying to help the people who need help the most. So, I don't take credit for it. I think all of us try to work together to try to get that done. So I appreciate the comments, though.
Thank you. Other responses? Okay. Representative Reekin.
Just thank you. And again, I mentioned to someone before that our legislative assistants have become caseworkers. It's a whole substructure of helping our constituents, and we're all doing it, and we're all very happy to be able to do it.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll move on to the next subject. We're on this side of the room now. See right down here in the front. Please step up to the microphone, please.
My name is Janet Hart James. I am retired. My husband's retired. We pay into Social Security, and we have secondary insurance. My husband is also a Vietnam vet. When we go to Marion or up to the clinic, we have to pay 20% of his bill. If we go to our own family doctors, we don't have to pay anything. So I called to find out why. And I was told that the VA system is a government-run project, and Medicare and Medicaid is a government-run project. And they don't pay themselves, and that's why we have to pay the veterans' bill, a 20% every time he goes to the VA clinic. I wonder if all of our veterans are done this way. And the second thing I'd like to say is thank you to Vanita Becker. I wrote that letter in 1999, and Linda Jones of the CSX Police Department was secretary, and it was on the Ohio Street. And if you hadn't got involved, it would have still been rolling around because it was passed a long time ago.
Thank you. Any other takes on the same subject? Yes.
I don't think I need a microphone, but I'm a veteran, and I have health problems, and I go there on the 22nd, so I just pray that I don't have anything I have to pay, because I am homeless, and I have 3 children, 1 in college and 2 in the shop street.
Okay, thank you. Responses from legislators. Senator Becker is first, then Representative Reekin.
I appreciate your comments and was glad to help on that Ohio Street project. As far as the VA clinic, that is really a federal program. We don't have any jurisdiction whatsoever over that. So I would encourage you, though, to contact Congressman Ellsworth as well as Senators Bayh and Senators Lugar about the 20% copay, because it is the federal government that determines that copay.
Thank you. Next is Representative Reekin.
Yes, and just a request, if you could get some contact information to me again, and we'll follow up with that. We've had several veterans issues where folks that are disabled are right on the verge of, or the cusp of, they should be disabled, and they're not getting that declaration. We have families. There's a family up near Kokomo that is just decimated, and both of them were in the service. And we do appreciate this and do appreciate your service, and we need to do more. So if you could get your information to us, I'd be happy to follow up. I know that Senator Becker or anybody else would. So if you could do that to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Other responses? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next subject. We're going to be on this side of the room now. So over here on the edge. Please step up to the microphone, please.
My name is Robert Goff. I'm retired. I would like to ask each of the representatives here, what have you done to get I-69 built? And I thank Gail Ricken for the information that she has in the back. I haven't seen it, but I'm sure looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone that has a different take on the same subject? Different take on the same subject. Okay, seeing none, responses from the legislators. First, I see Representative Crouch.
I voted for the bill that allowed the financing for I-69. If it hadn't been for that, we wouldn't be seeing construction right now. In addition, I voted against any opportunities or any plans to raid some of that money and take it away. So that's what I've done. And I think I-69 is probably the greatest economic development opportunity we will see in our lifetime. And it'll provide jobs, and it'll certainly move this area forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Other responses? Representative Van Haften.
I think what we're all looking after is point A to point B, not just from Evansville to Crane, but Evansville to Indianapolis, because there is where it'll connect to I-69 on the north side of Indianapolis. One of the things that I know we have done, Gail, Dennis, and I sat down with NDOT Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember, to get the progress report that they have and to find out how they're going about letting some of the contracts, what they're doing about elimination or adding some of the on-off ramps, as well as we've seen some discussion in regards to the level of construction. I mean, we've seen those stories about thin pavement, thick pavement, all that, and see some of the justification behind some of those arguments so that you continue it forward. And I know I can tell you personally, one of the things I've done in past sessions is looked at the limitations that have been placed upon I-69 once it gets to Bloomington and goes north. I think we all have to realize that the folks in Indianapolis are going to be our biggest impediment to that becoming a road all the way to Indianapolis. Perry Township in Marion County, they're on the southwest side. They are fighting it tooth and nail. I think you may end up at some point to avoid a blockage of it is seeing the route changed so that it heads out west a little bit towards the new airport as opposed to going straight into Indianapolis. But Suzanne is right. The major moves legislation, which some of us voted for, some of us voted against for different reasons, has provided the funding. We're making sure that that continues there, but we're also looking further down the road in terms of making sure this is a complete road and not just a nice road to Crane.
Thank you. Next was Senator Dyke.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Major moves. Legislation passed before I was actually in the state Senate, so I didn't get a chance to vote on it. I am in full favor of I-69, but I have some major concerns with major moves because a lot of that money was sold as a package of helping local construction people, engineering firms, and consulting firms. And I've got a list here of a lot of engineering work and consulting work going out of state and even out of the country. And let me just give you an example here. $40 million or $45 million is going, about half that is going about out of state right now for a job for I-465 and I-69. $1 million is going out for redesigning of travel lanes for I-64. That's going out of state. Another $4 million is going out of state for State Road 32. Another $1.5 million is going out for US 231 that was just let just 2 weeks ago. Another $2 million for a construction inspection project on I-65 is going out of state. And then another $28 million. This is for the design of sections 2 and 3 of I-69. 2/3 of that money, of the $28 million, is going out of state to firms doing the engineering work. And then I also have another $4 million. 100% of that money is going out of state to US 50 in Jennings County. So the major moves money that was supposed to be used for in-state work, I have some very legitimate concerns about that money going out of state and out of the country. We need to keep it here in the state of Indiana.
Thank you. Other responses? Senator Becker is next.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate your comments. I-69 is something that I've worked on for many years. In fact, former Senator Greg Server and I actually had the first study that was done that actually was used to move this project forward. And I can't tell you what year that was. It was back in the 80s. I want to give Governor Daniels his due on this particular issue. He has been the strongest advocate we've had to make sure that I-69 is built. And he and I disagree on a lot of things, but this is not one of them. This is something that I applaud him on, because without his leadership and without the major moves legislation, which I strongly supported, that provided over $700 million for I-69, this project would not be where it's at. We would not have seen the first segment done, and the second one, if you saw the headlines in either Thursday or Friday's Courier, the second one has been approved as well, and we will see construction start this summer on that. So it's actually, for the first time in history, that we've all been advocating for this economic development tool, and it's basically so that we can provide jobs in the future to our young folks throughout the state. It will open up so many areas that we don't currently have, and jobs as well. So I have to applaud him. We have the money in the bank to build it to Crane right now. We do not have the money after that, but the governor's goal, as is mine, is to make sure that it is built as far as possible in his tenure so that they cannot refuse to build it the rest of the way.
Thank you. Any other responses? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next subject. We're back on this side of the room. It's going to be my turn pretty soon. Don't see, I see somebody in the very back. Yes, please step forward up to the microphone.
districts. There's a bill pending to change that process on how they. I'd like to hear your response on that. And the other is legislation for complete streets. The need for this is illustrated kind of dramatically out on our Burkhart Road district. We've built our communities for cars rather than people. Anybody who would try to walk across our streets out there would risk their lives. And this complete streets bill that's pending now would require that streets, any new or redone street, would have to be built for people as well as cars. And I'd like you to address those two things. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other take on the same subject? Seeing none, responses from legislators. I see Representative Van Haften first, then Representative Avery.
Thank you, Roberta. We'll let you know the complete streets bill did pass. Did I get unplugged? I may have gotten unplugged. The complete streets bill did pass out of the House this week. I do know that. So it's moving along in the process. The redistricting issue is one that I find very fascinating. I look at my House District 76 over there, and to be quite honest with you, I think that's a good district in terms of the mapping of it. It's all of one county, and it takes up a good portion of Vanderburgh County, which I think Posey County, some people may say we're just the far, far west side. So I think there is a sense of community between those. The thing that concerned me, a couple things. I had to kind of chuckle when the Secretary of State put out some proposed maps, and they basically took all of Posey County and then into Gibson, in kind of the southern portion of Gibson County over to Oakland City area. And I'm thinking to myself, folks that live in St. Phillips identify more with the west side of Evansville than they sure do with Oakland City. So I think we have to be very careful in terms of what we look at, in terms of how we actually draw the maps. So when we get to drawing the maps, I've been in favor for a long time of the independent commission. I think the state of Iowa does something very good in terms of how it creates its commission. But the thing we have to look at is to make sure we have a truly nonpartisan approach to it. And I have yet to see a truly nonpartisan approach to it. The study committee that the Senate passed out involves the Chief Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court. Now, I have the highest regard and respect for Randall Shepard. He does a fantastic job. But I think to myself, if there's ever a challenge to the maps, do you start that in state court such that you're going to end up before the Chief Justice making a decision on the constitutionality of it when he has sat on the commission creating it? That, to me, creates a problem. I also was interested in seeing some comments from the Republican leader in the House that he, promotes an independent commission, and then a week later he goes on a radio show and says, if we drew the maps, we'd have 58 members. How in the world can you say you want something nonpartisan and then say we will win a certain number of races when you don't even know what the maps would look like, when you don't even know who would be running? I mean, it could be such that I end up running against Suzanne Crouch on a map. Now, I think we would end up in a tie. So we would kind of split one week after another. But and I think it's not having been there very long, there is something about the legislature having a say in it because of the Constitution. But I still think we need to step away from that and create a truly independent, nonpartisan commission to address the maps. The way I look at it is, if the majority of the people, whatever district I'm in, want me to serve, I'll serve. If they don't, I go do something else.
Thank you. I think you just said that because you're using her mic. So she's loaned to you. Next is Representative Avery. Couldn't resist.
Thank you, Jim. Years ago, I've served in the legislature for quite some time. I introduced legislation creating a bipartisan reapportionment commission. It was patterned after legislation that passed in the state of Colorado that was supported by an organization called Common Cause. And I introduced that legislation. It would have provided for 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and those 4 people would then pick the 5th person who would serve as chairman. That's hard when you get 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans trying to find an incredibly fair person to be the tie-breaking vote. But I still support that. I think that's an excellent idea. Or requiring that those 4 people do it, and they have to unanimously agree on it. That's even harder, I think. But I do think that's the best way of coming up with fair maps. It's a lot fairer than Trent pointed out the problems of the Chief Justice doing it, being on the Supreme Court. That was a problem because they'll have to have some oversight later, so they'll have to review the decisions, because I'm sure someone will sue because they won't like the maps. That seems to happen a lot. But the big problem is it truly a bipartisan commission when you got 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and the 5th person being Randy Shepard, who I have the highest regard for. He ran against me twice for state representative, back in 74 and 76, and he ran as a Republican. He ran for mayor of the city of Evansville as a Republican. He was vice chairman of the Republican Party in Evansville for a number of years. And he went to Republican state conventions, and I believe Republican national conventions. So, I think he's Republican. But I do think he is the best Chief Justice that Indiana's probably ever had, and I have tremendous respect for him. But I don't think he should serve on a bipartisan reapportionment commission, because I think he would work to be fair, but I think it'd be hard. And I do think, though, that we can devise a commission that would work, and I would hope that we would hear the bill that passed the Senate, and I would hope that we would debate the bill and pass something, because it's not fair that the partisans of both parties get together every 10 years and draw maps that benefit them. And there's no doubt that happens in all the districts except mine, of course. But I do think that it's something that's important, and because it does reflect who controls government for the next 10 years and beyond that, and it's important. And I think in the House we've honestly done a pretty good job, because it's pretty balanced. Some years Republicans kick our butts and they're in the majority, and then we turn around and get them back the next 2 years and we're in the majority. So, but the Senate, on the other hand, that doesn't happen in the Senate. They just, I guess they're just better map drawers.
Okay, thank you. Next is Senator Becker, then Senator Dyke, then Representative Regan.
The Senate did pass 2 bills on redistricting. One of them was Senate Bill 80, and the other one was Senate Bill 136. They've now gone over to the House. And one of them looks at the best practices of looking at reapportionment or drawing the maps, what other states are doing. And the other one sets out guidelines for the state in looking at maps. And one thing I want to say is I think my district's a very contiguous district. It includes Vandenberg and Warwick counties only. And I had nothing to do with the drawing of it. Senator Server did, and I can remember him telling me that the Senate Republicans wanted him to take more Republicans from Gibson County and Spencer County. Then he would have had to represent 4 counties, and he said, "No, I don't want to do that. I'll take my chances with my local Democrats," even though he was a Republican. So. Politically, if you're looking at Republican-Democrat, it's a much closer alignment as far as numbers are concerned, but it's much better as far as the community of interest are the same. And so one thing, I'm not sure, I don't care who's on any kind of who appoints who, depending on who, these are going to be appointments, and they're going to be made by the Senate and the House or the governor. I don't think there's any way you can remove politics completely from this process. Because you're always going to have, as Dennis said, you're going to have Democrats and Republicans, and those people that are going to be appointed are going to have an interest, or they're not going to be there, and they're going to have an interest in their party. So I don't think that there's any way to completely remove politics from it, but I do think best practices and looking at the guidelines of community interest are very positive. We do that already, so we're really restating the obvious. But one thing I do want to share with you is the fact that most people don't realize it would really take a constitutional amendment to change the way Indiana does its maps, because under our Constitution it says that the General Assembly draws the maps. That's what it says. And so we can put these changes in effect, but they're going to be long-term into the future. And I think in the meantime, it's going to be very difficult to completely remove politics from the process.
Thank you. Next is Senator Dyke, then Representative Reekin.
Thank you. You all made very good points, but I just want to draw your attention to my map over there on the side there. Senate District 489. I believe south of me is Kentucky, and I believe west of me is Illinois, so I don't have a whole lot of room to move other than go to Senator Becker's district. Now, what the Secretary of State did do, he moved me up to Princeton area, which is where Senator Lyndall Hume lives, and I was put in the same district as him. So I think the Secretary of State spent over $1 million drawing these maps and sending them out to people's homes and putting in a newspaper because I think he wants a higher office in the state of Indiana. But I didn't agree with that. And if somebody wants to drive my district sometime, I'll take them for a little drive around USI. And Senator Server at the time did get USI in his district. I live 3 miles away from USI. And I go right around the big donut hole area of USI. And so that's not my district. So I drive in and out of my district constantly. So it is very political. If you don't believe me, look at the Senate Republicans. Since 1975, 1980, 1990, and 2000, they drew the maps. They have a 33-17 majority. I have nowhere to go, so they can't put me in Kentucky and Illinois, so I'm pretty happy where I'm at right now.
Okay. Next, Representative Reekin, and then Representative Crouch.
On redistricting, I certainly support all the initiatives that have gone on, and there are some guidelines, and I was looking for them here, and I can't find them right now, but certainly if they're not in that particular Senate bill, would like to see them added. But they deal with fairness and openness, and I think openness is one of the things that we really need to be careful about and make sure that everybody has some input, even though it'll be this small group. We did in financial institutions talk about the website, if you all have seen the website and the financing, and there was a lot of concern about some of the issues that were presented under the Todd Rokita's name, and maybe the advertising and the $1.5 million of taxpayer money. And I don't think that'll happen anymore. We're going to see those stop. But in particular, legislation for complete streets, great idea. I'm glad it passed. Not just cars and people, but also bicycles and any form of alternative transportation. We're seeing in the counties, in the House, more legislation about the electric golf carts. And that's very interesting. They're becoming very popular. We saw one this year, and a couple last session. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Representative Crouch.
Well, first of all, I want to clarify something. When Representative Van Haften started his explanation, he went and pointed towards me and said the Republican leader in the House. That wasn't me.
No, I'm sorry.
Anyway, on redistricting back in 2006, the House did vote and did pass out a bill that would allow for a nonpartisan committee to draw the maps and make recommendations to the legislature, and I'm all in favor of that. I agree with Senator Becker, you're never going to take all the partisanship out, but the closer we get towards providing transparency and instilling confidence in people and what is being done not for political purposes, I think we all gain as a result of that. And I'll point you to my district back there, District 78. Now that one is a little interesting. I like it, but it certainly was drawn by some very creative people.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to another issue now. We're on this side of the room. See right here in the front. Please come up, state your name, please.
I'm Dr. Ray Nicholson. My interest is Senate Bill 298, which would do away with the Indiana Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Fund as it is now exists, and give it to the State Board of Health. This was created in 1998 to handle the distribution from the Tobacco Fund settlement, and it is funded by a lot of people that make bequests, make gifts, and other areas of interest. It is not funded by any state taxes at all. And this would take away the fund and the executive committee that runs the fund and give it to the State Board of Health. And the main reason is in order to save some money. The money that goes into this fund is targeted for tobacco, against tobacco, for prevention and cessation of tobacco. This money should not be used for any other purpose. And if they take it away from this control of this committee that was designated as a private committee to keep it away from the usual government sources in order to keep it preserved for that purpose, I can't see what good it's going to do to the state to take it away and give it to other entities. It's going to decrease the control of what we're doing. I wear two hats on this because I work with the Tobacco Coalition here in Evansville, and they're very active and they're doing a wonderful job. But I'm also the county officer for the county health department. And so I had a meeting with Judy Monroe last week, and I asked her, I wear two hats, which side am I supposed to be on? And much to my surprise, she did not know that this legislation had been introduced. That she knew it at that point, but when it was originally introduced, it was a total surprise to her. And they've made no plans at all to absorb the purpose of this group and to carry it on. And they would have to hire other people in the Department of Health in order to carry this on. So I'd appreciate any comments about that.
Okay, thank you. So essentially, they're not eliminating the fund; they're just changing who gets to spend it. Eliminating the fund. Okay. Other takes on the same issue? Okay. Responses from legislators. I see Representative Avery first, then Representative Rican.
Thank you. Senate Bill 298 has already passed the Senate, and I believe this one got 18 no votes or something like that, and I have a feeling that was the one. But it's not been assigned to a committee in the House yet. It will most likely be assigned to Ways and Means. If it is, I will do all I can to make sure it stays there. I think it's a very bad idea. And I think this really goes to the heart of the governor's problem. Is he makes these decisions in a vacuum. He doesn't consult people. And if Judy Monroe was not aware of it, that is incredible. But I understand in talking to many legislators that are involved in healthcare issues that they weren't aware that this bill would be introduced. The money comes from for the most part, the lawsuit that was filed years ago against the tobacco industry by different attorneys general around the country, and it brings in hundreds of millions of dollars nationwide. Indiana is using most of it for different health programs, and I think that's what the governor wants to use all of it for various health programs. But a portion of it we have always committed to tobacco smoking cessation and prevention of smoking, and that's why we created this agency, this program, with its own board of trustees or directors, and I think to take that money. Violates the agreement that we had at the time, which we would work toward reducing tobacco use. And I was in a hospital last night and spent most of the night in the hospital with a relative that's had a heart attack, and she's a lifelong tobacco user. And and instead of being hurt by what's obviously going to occur, I was angry that this industry is killing people like it is. I'll quit.
Okay, next, Representative Rican, then Representative Crouch.
Just a fast comment. I agree wholeheartedly that this bill should not go any further, and it reminds me of the bill last year, Senate Bill 524, and maybe some folks here they'll remember, and that was where it took a lot of the input, the community input, volunteer input out of decision making, and that's bad. It becomes very, very much control within a small beltway in Indianapolis.
Thank you. Representative Crouch, next.
You know, I had gotten some information on the Tobacco Master Settlement Fund because I was just curious how much we spend on trying to get people to quit smoking instead of legislating it? What are we actually spending? And I believe that settlement fund brings in annually $50 million. Does that sound about right, Dennis?
I can't recall the exact numbers.
Less than $2 million is spent on helping people quit smoking. The rest is spent on other health initiatives, but not on helping people quit smoking. And it seems like that happens all the time. Government gets a pot of money, and they end up spending it on things that it wasn't meant to be spent on. And that doesn't matter which administration is in. So I think that to take all the money away from helping people quit smoking when we spend so little of it is just a travesty.
Thank you. Senator Becker was next. Senator Becker, you're next.
Since this is a Senate bill, Senator Dyke and I have been having our own caucus on it. Senate Bill 298, it's really an omnibus bill. I mean, it's got all kinds of stuff in it. And what Dr. Nicholson spoke to is one of the elements. That was one reason I voted against the bill, not the only reason. I was one of the 18 that voted no, because it also had language in it that did away with the protections that we put in 2001 for the Evansville Psychiatric Children's Center. And I'm very opposed to that. And that language was also into 295. Senator Kinley was asked by the administration, by the Daniels administration, to carry this piece of legislation that has all kinds of things in it. It's a Christmas tree already to start with. It deals also with the administration of TERF and PERF, and there's various views on that, and there's various views as to how much money it would save. One thing I do want to indicate is that the Smoking Cessation Fund was not eliminated in that bill. We had discussion about that on third reading, and it was not eliminated. Senator Kinley did indicate he had talked to Dr. Monroe, but not until just the day before that bill was on third reading. So I do think it's wrong to switch responsibilities over to another agency without ever talking to the head of that agency. And Dr. Monroe is a wonderful person, and she is a doctor, and she has health care issues at the heart of her reason for serving. And so I think, but what they were hoping to do, and I mean, this is their goal, they thought maybe they could save some administrative cost at the Board of Health. But they also admitted that the Board of Health couldn't do that responsibility without hiring more people. So my guess is they're not going to save a whole lot of money in the long run. But it's a Christmas tree of all kinds of things, and that was one of the reasons why I voted against it, was because of the smoking cessation, because Representative Crouch is right. We spend very little money that came from the Tobacco Master Settlement Fund to prevent smoking, and yet we also know that these types of programs do work. They do encourage and help people and teenagers to quit smoking or not to start in the first place. So I think there's a good group that does it, and it ought to stay there.
Thank you. Representative Van Haften was next, then Senator Dyke.
I guess just real quick, Dr. Nicholson, I think there's none of us are supportive of removing that funding or shifting the responsibilities, because all of us have seen what the local coalitions have been able to do here in our area. So I think we are getting a value for the input that's going on into those. I would also note I have in my the committee I chair, House Public Policy, there's another Senate bill that came over pushed by the Attorney General's office that currently there are tobacco manufacturers that are participating and non-participating manufacturers that have a responsibility to pay into this master settlement fund. Apparently some are not participating in it when they should, and the Attorney General is seeking some authority to be able to go after those that made the agreement to participate in the master settlement fund to make sure they are participating. So that is a bill we're going to hear on Wednesday morning, which hopefully we'll be able to continue the Senate's efforts on through the House, so that not only will we maintain the local coalitions, but we will also make sure that we are properly getting the funds Indiana deserves.
Thank you. Next, Senator Dyke.
Thank you. First of all, the University of Evansville physical therapy students back there, this is your health care bill you want to hear about. So I just want to make sure you know that. This is your extra credit. And Dr. Nicholson, thank you for serving the county and everything you do for the county here, too. So it's a thankless job, I'm sure, but thank you. I want to also I'm thanking a lot of people here. I want to thank Senator Becker for voting no with me and the Senate Democrats on this bill, too, because it did take in a lot of different things, not only the smoking cessation, but also the state hospital and the local children's psychiatric hospital, too, here in Evansville. So you can say what you want about politics, but when it comes to local issues, we always stick together and try to get things done for the local community.
Thank you. We're almost out of time. I want to do one last request from folks, and that is to see if you have any comments on the on effects from Indiana elections from two Supreme Court decisions. One U.S. Supreme Court decision declared that a corporation was a person, had the rights of a person, and the other declared that a corporation could spend pretty much whatever they wanted to on elections. How do you think that will affect Indiana? Or do you think that we will devolve into a corporate plutocracy? Responses? All right. Senator Becker.
Well, I've always been a strong advocate for putting limits. I've filed bills in the House for several years to limit the amount of money that individuals and corporations and labor unions could contribute to PACs, but it's never passed. It's because neither party wants it. This is a federal issue that you just spoke about, and it doesn't limit corporations, but it also doesn't limit labor unions either. So I don't think it's going to have a whole lot of effect in this year just because there's so many different elections up this year. But it really is an issue that the feds need to deal with. It's not really one that we as a state government can deal with. And I think because it was done by the U.S. Supreme Court, it would require a constitutional amendment to change it. And I think that Congress is considering that. Whether they will do it it's too soon to say. But I think what it means is, it's open-ended spending on elections. And that's unfortunate. I would really like to see all of us, both state and federal government, limit the time frame, kind of like Britain does. They limit the election ads to 6 weeks before the election, and we would all like that because we start hearing these election ads come February, and we hear them until after November.
Actually, there is a constitutional amendment that has been introduced, but the question is partly how it would affect Indiana at all, if you think so. Other responses, if any? Representative Avery, then Representative Rican.
I think it would have an impact on Indiana if corporations are allowed to spend anything they want to spend to promote candidates or defeat candidates, and that a lot of legislators are frightened of their own shadows, and I think this will make them more fearful of doing what is right. And too often, I think legislators are so worried about the next election that they don't do what's in the best interest of the public. And that just not only applies to legislators, but that applies to other public officials too. But I'm very worried about the result of that decision. That a casino that wants to do anything to promote its interests might very well go after legislators that do not agree. I think the next logical step is they're probably going to pass legislation allowing corporations to vote. And that would really be disgusting if that were to occur. But I don't have a lot of confidence in what might happen in the future in some of these areas.
Thank you. Next, Representative Rican.
Well, the last time I ran an election, I had smokestacks coming out of my head, so I don't know what I'll have in this one with all the money that might be out there. But I will say this, the concern that I have more than anything is deterring new people getting in. Because, after a period of time, sometimes you can just brush that off. But the new people, we've got new people that really would like to get into politics, and it's a shame if they only see the rough side of it.
Thank you. We are lastly, Senator Dunn.
Thank you. You know, I'm against any money being put into politics, to tell you the truth. I would like to see all labor unions, all businesses, all lobbyists, cut the money away from all of it and just run on your morals.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time. I'd like to thank everybody for being here, thanking our sponsors, and of course thanking the legislators. Next session that we will have right in this room will be March the 6th. Please take your cups and napkins and things over toward the kitchen, and consider while you're over there to make a donation into the donation jar. Thank you.